Hi, this is Elizabeth, one of the co-hosts of Beauties and Headcanons. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media.
This is Ryan Pierce, host of Completely Serious here on Public House Media. Thanks for listening to the following broadcast on Public House Media. Once you're done with this episode, I hope you'll come check out my show, Completely Serious, where we talk about sports and have fun with great guests. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes so you'll never miss an episode of Completely Serious. Thanks again for checking out the following broadcast on Public House Media.
In 2014, Germany shocked the world by putting together one of the most talented and most dominant rosters in soccer history.
Götze! It's Mario Götze!
Argentina, they were so close, yet couldn't put it together when it most mattered. Now you've got an Argentina team that's hungry for revenge.
Messi! And Yeva couldn't stop it!
But what about England?
Pass to Rooney. Sturridge in the middle, there he is, goal!
Or France?
And Sissoko! They're running riot!
Or Spain?
It's broken for Fabregas, now it's Iniesta! This is it! That's the goal!
All 32 teams in this tournament are vying for the opportunity to hoist the World Cup trophy.
Still Gervinho! Oh, he's done it!
If you want to be a part of the action at Russia 2018, you're going to need your soccer passport, the World Cup edition. At Public House Media, we are excited to launch a new soccer podcast called Your Soccer Passport World Cup Edition. Come alongside hosts and fans and guests from around the world as we bring you all the action from the 2018 FIFA World Cup. Because who knows, anything can happen in the FIFA World Cup.
What about that? It's John Brooks!
So come on, grab your soccer passport and join us for all the action from Russia 2018.
A sensational volley!
Hi everyone, welcome to Your Soccer Passport World Cup Edition. The World Cup final is in the bag, and my, what a World Cup final it was as we see France emerge victorious for the second time in the history of the World Cup, winning 4-2 over Croatia. There is a lot to break down about this game, but before we do that, we want to remind you this show is brought to you by Squadcast.fm. We are heard here on Public House Media. Go ahead and check out Squadcast by heading over to their website, squadcast.fm. And of course, Public House Media, go to thephmedia.com. I'm joined by there's three of us. Wow, I don't know how to do my math, guys. I'm sorry. There's four of us total, but I'm joined by three other wonderful guests that have helped make this entire World Cup very memorable. I'm joined by Ivan Sanchez, by Brice Burge, and Luis Burranca as well, too. Gentlemen, good evening to you. Welcome to Your Soccer Passport. This is the last time we get to call it World Cup Edition because we've got some news that we'll announce later in the show about the future of the show. But first and foremost, good evening, gentlemen. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, Baxter.
Let's jump right into it here, guys. A 4-2 World Cup final. It got started in the 18th minute as Mario Mandzukic was credited with an own goal that gave France the 1-0 lead. 10 minutes later, though, it was Perisic that had a great little flick on goalie to make it 1-1. Then Griezmann scores in the 38th minute on a penalty kick. We go to the halfway break at 2-1. France adds two more goals in the 59th and 65th minutes from Paul Pogba and Mbappe, and then we see Mario Mandzukic get a weird goal. Again, he has a knack for scoring weird goals in the 69th minute, and despite some of the great opportunities, Croatia and even France had a couple late ones as well, too. We end 4-2. I'll be honest, I was thoroughly entertained this entire World Cup final, and this is the first time in many, many World Cup finals we wouldn't have to go to extra time to decide a winner. So I think that made everybody really happy. But Ivan, let's start with you. What were your first initial thoughts as soon as that final whistle blew and France was officially crowned World Cup champions?
I thought in general France were just the most consistent team of the tournament the last month, and they showed it this tournament. Conte was his usual beast in the middle, allowing Pogba to allow Pogba to be fantastic, and I thought that combination really overwhelmed Croatia over the 60 minutes, and then Conte got subbed out. But so I thought they were the comment what they did this game was what they've done all tournament. They've relied on Hugo to be a stud in the back. They relied on Varane in the middle along with Titi, and Conte in front of them, and they just kind of they never got flustered, and they just kind of little by little just overtook the game as they've done all tournament long for the most part. They really suffocated Croatia, and then they took the opportunities up top when they needed to. And big shout out to France because they were able to win the World Cup without an actual forward because Giroud was terrible, like he's been all tournament.
I saw so many people that were commenting on that. They're like, it was so cool. I mean, everyone understands France won with 10 men. Like, wow, what a great. And people are like commenting like, there was a red card. I'm like, no, it's just, there's this useless piece of space that he's a good looking guy, but that's as far as it goes. It's just, unfortunately, I will say I found it interesting. The commentators, at least here in the U.S., spent a good deal of time talking about Giroud, though, because his hold-up play and his distribution, even though he didn't get any shots off, still was very good, though. I think he was that number 9 that basically was like holding back defenders to receive the ball and then push it wide to some of the attackers as they were coming down the wing. So, yes, not exactly how you want a forward to be playing because you want to see him scoring goals, but at the same time, he was still helping keep the ball and then distributing it where it needed to be. So I definitely get the criticism, but at the same time, he didn't really do a lot bad either. But Brice, what did you take away from this final?
I took away that I was really disappointed that I wasn't playing weird soccer bingo. I mean, this was a final that had so many different things to it. First penalty kick resulting from VAR. You had an own goal. You had a player score for both sides. You had pitch invaders. You had just so many weird and wacky things to it. And, it was nice because out of the wildness that was this World Cup as a whole, it was a fitting final. You saw a bunch of really unique plays happen with some non-traditional styles. I mean, some of that style comes from the lack of having a number 9 up top, but it still helps out to see a team like Croatia that's so small and so resilient and was probably one of your more physical European teams in the tournament. So I thought it was a fitting final for what was one of the more inclusive entertainment that we've seen in a World Cup. It wasn't just the beautiful game. It wasn't just the grinded out. It was something that pretty much any soccer or football fan in any spot of the world could find something that they liked about it. And I was a little disappointed. I was rooting for Croatia, and there were some parts of that final that I just really didn't like. But at the same time, I thought it was a fitting end.
Well, based on the hair that you have, I'm sure you and Vita probably connected on a different level, being like, "Hey, brother, like we have the same hair." Kind of. No, I'm just kidding. Luis, what did you take away from this final? I know you always have a very cool and unique perspective of how you look at matches, but France getting the second World Cup in 20 years. Your thoughts about this game?
Well, first of all, 2 things. First, I want to put myself in a role of a historian. 20 years ago, France made also into the big win in the World Cup without a central forward, because let's remember that neither Christophe Dugarry or Guy Varch those guys didn't make goals also back in 1998. And the same thing happened today with Olivier Giroud. He ends up in that pantheon in this occasion. France gets the title without central forwards. It's not France is not actually the best national team with the best forwards in the world. Although they have an attacking midfielder plays that it's actually divine for me. The other stuff is that today, in my opinion, I think we all that we're from the American continent, we should learn about that. The soccer logic should stop. Should be stopped to see, because the team that had the ball the most, Croatia, haven't won. In my opinion, and Croatia obviously deserved more. In this occasion, France had momentum, and like I said in the preview, too much patience from from the team of Didier Deschamps.
Interesting. Now, I'm curious because I going off of that tangent that you had really fast with American soccer and just the continent as a whole, I read a fascinating article today, actually, talking about lessons that what the 2018 World Cup taught soccer moms and dads, but I won't get into the too big of details, but I thought there were some really interesting points. And it said, curses aren't real, preparation is. And basically it was talking about, how teams don't just get in because of on merit, Italy, Netherlands, the United States, talking about how England had to do a lot of extra preparation for extra time and then penalty kicks because they've had that issue for so long. So that was a really big thing. And what you just hit on, possession isn't enough. It was another big one that it said too. It talked about the Spain versus Russia game too. The fact that Spain connected over 1,000 passes in that game and Russia connected 300 and Russia won the game. So it's not all about possession and emphasizing more about the fact that we need to continue focusing on getting shots on goal and being more of an attacking minding, don't just string together 40 passes and do nothing with it. Why are you playing soccer if you're not trying to win the game, right? And then the other big ones were headers aren't going anywhere. 21% of all the goals in this World Cup were scored on those. Own goals are inevitable. And then finally have set plays for set pieces as well, too. It's a fascinating article. I'm happy to share it with you guys as well, too. But I found it interesting because that was looked at from the vantage point of just American soccer as a whole. And I'm sitting there reading this article going, yep. So I'm like, gosh. So, but talk to me though. I mean, I guess, Ivan, I want to go back to you about this. This final specifically looked at, was Croatia tired in your opinion? They had just played 3 consecutive matches where they really got pushed to the limit. They were coming from behind now from the 4th match in a row after Mandzukic got that own goal. Do you think that Croatia just ran out of gas?
I think that's part of the problem. Besides they had to play a whole 90 minutes more than France once you add up the 3 extra times. And also they had a day less rest. Their starting 11 is very talented, and then they don't have the depth that France has when you look at the full roster, including the fact they had to send a forward home after the first game. So that could have been an issue. I think mostly this is France, more of a merit to France than it is against what Croatia did. I just think France was all trim and long, which is better than most of the teams, and they did it. I don't think they won in the style we hoped for, because when you look at all the talent and all the names on the team, you wanted them to be a little more razzle-dazzle. I think they've suffocated, especially once the knockout stages started. They started suffocating the teams and overwhelming them with their style of play and just the overall talent, especially when you look at the midfield. And that's where Croatia wanted to play through. They wanted to use Stitch and Modric, but that's where France is the strongest, with Pogba and Kante really just having a really great 1-2 combination in the middle and balance each other really well. And then you have the rest of the talent up front of them, on the sides, Braun in the back. It really just, I just don't think Croatia had enough guns and their plan B wasn't good enough for France once the goals started coming in and once they started to play their game.
Brice, what do you take away at this game? I thought it was intriguing because the way France played this game, I was honestly confused on where Paul Pogba was for, I'd say, at least the first 60 minutes of the game. And then all of a sudden he pops up and obviously scores that wonderful goal. And then we start to kind of see him come alive a little bit more. But was he doing enough in the shadows that we didn't notice him in a good way, or we were noticing because he wasn't involved in the game, in your opinion?
It's tough to really break down Pogba's real merit, because just as we had talked about Giroud being that kind of game manager forward that allowed the ball to be redistributed in different ways, Pogba also kind of took on a role that just allowed him to support other cast members on the team. It wasn't necessarily anything that I thought was exceptional, but he did what he had to do. For a team like France that wasn't winning by razzle-dazzle, they were winning by good defense. They put themselves in good positions out on the field, out on the pitch, to really make sure that they were preventing counterattacks. And even though that is kind of not what Croatia was looking at doing out there, it was good enough to just kind of stop them. So, it's hard to knock what Pogba or really anybody on that French team did when you look at the success that they had. For me, I think it's more along the other side of what did Croatia have to overcome I thought that the first goal, the own goal, came from a set piece off of one of the softest penalties that we've seen in this entire World Cup. Very disappointed by that call. And then the best counterattack that Croatia had in the entire game was disrupted not by French defenders, but by pitch invaders. So, it's very disruptive, because you're talking about how tired you are, how frustrated you are. Think about the mental aspects of what that means to these players out there when they can't catch a break. If they bought a Kit Kat bar out of the vending machine during a halftime show, they still can't get any kind of thing moving in their direction. It's very frustrating for them. So you take the mental tiredness on top of the physical tiredness, and then you play with a guy like Pogba. When you talk about a mature team, a mature beyond their years team, and how young this French squad was, France mentally won the game, and it doesn't show statistically. I mean, it's something that they've done this entire tournament, and you can only give credit to them in so much numbers, because statistically that mental preparedness just isn't going to be shown, and it's really what won it for France.
Luis, how do you react to this talk about Croatia running out of gas and the way France kind of maybe is it bad to say France just got a couple of lucky breaks? They didn't earn this World Cup victory, or am I stepping over the line by saying that they were lucky as opposed to talented and did it by their own merits?
Well, before giving my thoughts, I just heard Brice, and I think Domagoj Vida is actually here, because I can feel that frustration right now with the Croatian team. Actually, it's very frustrating. As I repeat, Croatia deserved a little bit more than they got. However, let's put some facts. What happens is that we have fallen in love with the vertical games, the possession games, kind of like Barcelona, Real Madrid, the German teams, that tiki-taka style, that possession play, and that's what Croatia wanted to do. However, they didn't knew that they were against a team that, like I said once, not just twice, like even 3 times in all the shows. France is a team that only wants to get the job done. That's how the Year of the Champs works, and that's how. And he learned, which in my opinion is the best French manager ever. That's Aimé Jacquet. For me, the Year of the Champs has learned a lot from him, and the first thing he learns is that it doesn't matter which team you're facing. It doesn't matter if it's a possession team like Barcelona. It doesn't matter if it's a vertical team, I don't know, like Germany, or in case of clubs, Bayern Munich, or that stuff. What you need to do is don't try to give some matters to the rival. You just need to get the job done, and that's how France works. I think they had a brain refreshing from 1998, because that's how the team worked. I don't know if you guys saw that match, because like Baxter said, we were 10 years old. But when I saw those videos in college and in my house somewhere, this French team they didn't give I don't know, trash about Brazil, that came along with stars like Ronaldo, that it was a team that wanted to make the fan to fall in love with their game. The French people don't want to make people fall in love with their game, and
no,
they just wanna clear the job. They wanna make it done, and that's how they work. Not just in soccer, but in life itself.
And I completely agree with you on that too. And I thought the commentators mentioned that a couple of times during the game, even at the end when France won. I think it was Stuart Holden here in the United States that said, France didn't win this game because it wasn't even Stuart. It was one of the studio hosts that was back in Red Scare for Fox Sports saying France didn't win this game because they played a beautiful game. They played it because they just they had the right things happen for them, basically. So you could see those commentators even kind of poking at France a little bit, saying, "Listen, it wasn't a pretty game to watch, but yeah, France won the game, and that's what you're supposed to do, is win the game." But it's ironic to see that's kind of how it is, and it's funny how people's culture sometimes just bleed into their sports as well too. Sometimes. I do want to make mention, of course, as well too, if you are listening to the show, that we are presented by Squadcast.fm, and we are heard here on Public House Media. You can check out both those websites by going to thephmedia.com and Squadcast.fm. Ivan, as you look at this final, the World Cup is done. We're going to do a full recap of the World Cup here in the next couple of days, but are you, as a fan, not as a journalist, not as anything else, are you, as a fan, satisfied with how this tournament ended, with France beating Croatia? You don't even necessarily care about the result in a sense of that, but if you would have started all the way back to the beginning and said, all right, France and Croatia are going to make it to the final, would you have believed that in the beginning / where you are now? Do you still believe that those two teams that made the final, do you believe that was possible, or was that the best outcome for this tournament?
I think France was one of the four most talented teams in the tournament before the tournament started. You looked at Spain, you looked at Germany, you looked at Brazil, and you looked at France. I thought those four were a cut above everybody else when you looked at the overall, everybody entering. Croatia was always a dark horse, and they never lived up to their potential when you looked at their Euros a couple of years ago, World Cup 4 years ago. I mean, it's not surprising, and I think once you saw how the way the tournament was playing out and all these upsets and all in the knockout stages, the Croatia run was fantastic, especially the way they battled through 3 overtime games. I think Luka Modric finally got a lot of recognition that he doesn't get at Real Madrid, or doesn't get in general, just because he plays in La Liga and he doesn't play in the EPL anymore, and the English media doesn't recognize even for playing for Real Madrid, they don't recognize that type of talent, what he is and what he's been for Real Madrid for so many years. And I think the fact that you got players like him who were finally recognized on a global stage a little more, and weren't overshadowed by his other teammates like Ronaldo or things of that matter. And then you have a young star and 19, Mbappe, who was just coming out party. And you just see things like that, and makes you you see one guy who's 33, you see one guy who's 19, and they're both getting their dues, and you see where soccer has been and where you see someone get introduced like that, and you see where soccer can go with someone like Mbappe, who is a freak of nature and took this tournament by storm. I think I left satisfied and happy, besides Mexico losing to Brazil. But besides that, it was very unique, and it was a very beautiful World Cup when you saw a lot of uniqueness. You saw England, a young England. We'll talk about this later in a different podcast, but you saw a run like England. You saw teams like Sweden. You saw a very unique World Cup that doesn't all the big guns didn't produce, and so it'll lift for something a little unique, and I like that.
Brice, same question over to you, sir. Is this tournament ultimately, the result that ended up being the tournament, are you satisfied? I know you were cheering for Croatia, so take your Croatia hat off for a second, wipe the red and white checkers off your face for a second. But were you, from a non-biased fan perspective? Yeah, I'm sure. I didn't wipe the sunscreen in enough. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No,
are you satisfied with how it ended?
I am to a point, and I'm not to a point, because there's two schools of thought, and for me, the rapid reaction of it is yes, but the more I think about it, it's no. And rapid reaction, I like the wackiness, I like the upsets, I like the small countries sticking out. But at the same time, this is the first time in my lifetime that my host country of the United States did not make the World Cup. And I really kind of got a culture shock, just to kind of break the fourth wall and get a little bit more personal with this, is that for the first time, I was like the vast majority of, the rest of my species that didn't see their country in the World Cup. Well, I don't know, humanity.
Chile.
Yeah, absolutely. There were a lot of them. Chile, Italy. I mean, there were a lot of countries that weren't in there, which created a little bit of wackiness to it. But at the same time, you started picking up on as a fan, you were paying attention to things differently than what you were when your country's involved, and
Right.
so that whole experience was very different for me. And you start picking up on some of my international friends from Canada or Morocco or stuff like that. Morocco was in there, but it's just hearing some of the storylines coming from them. The dirty taste in a lot of people's mouths by having 14 of the French national team members all come from Africa and African nations. You're seeing that a lot with other European teams that went really farther on, especially the ones that were a part of that final six, based on the bracket. There were, the last six teams in this World Cup were European. So that aspect is a little confusing because I would have never thought about that before if the United States was not in it. And so in terms of what happened on the pitch, I love it. I want every World Cup to be like it, but as you start to actually be a fan and start to see some of the dynamics of why people are soccer fans and why people are connected to the sport, this was a really humbling experience. And it's something that I wouldn't necessarily recommend per se, but it's definitely something to kind of think about. And I'll still be thinking about it, past this recording.
And I think really this World Cup, and I think you hit the nail on the head there, Brice, this World Cup opened the eyes of a lot of people, because when your host nation, or not your host nation, when your nation doesn't make it to the tournament, like in our case, the United States, it really changes the perspective, I think, on a lot of things. And you start to pick up on a lot of different things. I also really started to hear a lot more conversation about, people, nations like France, like, oh, half the roster is not even from France. I'm like, wait a minute, what? Like you start to pick up on so many of these different storylines that you're not focused on when you're just following your team and you're just trying to figure out whether or not Chris Wondolowski's not going to miss him 3 feet away in front of the goal. Anyway, I'm over it. But either way, it's moments like that stick with you for a long time, and you don't even think about anybody else. I had no clue who Belgium was 4 years ago. I had no clue. I didn't even know who this Hazard and Lukaku, any of these guys. And all of a sudden, I'm like, oh, cool, we got to play Belgium. No problem. And sure enough, they, wipe the floor with us in a sense and then move on from there. But you get so blind when your nation is in. But obviously that it's a unique perspective like you, Luis, when Peru gets into the tournament for the first time in a long, long time, and you're just riding this an emotional high. Obviously you want your team to do well, but I feel like you're almost one of those people like, we're at the party. We don't even care if we, don't even get to talk to the cute girl across the room. We're just excited to be at the party.
Well, as you said, it was actually 36 years. In this occasion, which is the opposite of Brice. Well, I think people here are not talking that much about we were actually at the party. We didn't have to talk with the cutest girl in the place. They're talking about getting prettier, actually, because this generation actually a quarter of the national team is going to be wiped out because of their age. They're getting too old, like Paulo Carreno, like Jefferson Farfán, those guys. However, what this World Cup has taught me, which was the first taste of being there, it is the fact that how can I say this? It was unique, as you said, but it actually really had a not a perfect happy ending, but a very how can I say that, like a fair ending, with France showing some supremacy, showing patience, and I'm talking about the team that took us out, that wiped us out, and being impartial. I have to say, I enjoyed it in both ways, in the professional and the personal way. Also, obviously, the personal way, who wouldn't enjoy it if your team is in. However, we have to work a lot. Obviously, as a Peruvian, and as a South American, we have to work a lot if we want to be if we want to get used to get into this big great party, obviously, because it's not that easy. I think it's gonna be easier in a few years. That I heard that the FIFA is gonna bring 40. There are gonna be 48 teams in the World Cup, and I think it's gonna be in the U.S., Canada, Mexico World Edition in 2026. So. I talked about it with Ivana, I think a few weeks ago. It's gonna be bigger, but it's not gonna be the same competitive way it was. It is traditionally.
Yep, and I would agree with that. And that's definitely a deeper topic for another podcast, but I appreciate you touching on that as well too, Luis. But gentlemen, we're coming to the end of this recording here for Your Soccer Podcast Your Soccer Passport. I know where I am, World Cup edition. Ivan, I want to get your thoughts, please, as we wrap this up. Final thoughts about this World Cup final and what stood out to you the most, I guess. Your final thoughts on what stood out to you the most in this final as France defeats Croatia 4-2.
I thought just France were the most consistent team in the tournament, and they deserved it at the end when you look at their work over the last month, game by game. They never overwhelmed teams, but they were just the most consistent and were always in the right place at the right time. And this is very much a manifestation of their Euro loss 2 years ago when they hosted it. And it just kind of, I felt they thought that was a lost opportunity, and they made up for it in this World Cup. So I think France was very worthy champions, and you could tell they had a chip on their shoulder from 2 years ago, losing Euros at home to winning it today. So, I mean, my hat's off to France, to the French people. Celebrate, have a good time. They deserved it. They owned it. A very, not, as we talked about, they didn't dazzle us the way we hoped for when you looked at all their attacking talent, but they were very efficient in what they did. So, my hat's off to France.
Brice, what about you? Your final thoughts and just overall takeaway from this final?
I said it before with it being wacky, but the thing is that when you have wackiness and literally just the wild cards and the kitchen sinks being thrown at the players out on the pitch, France was a stable, mature, understanding, and skilled team throughout this tournament. And that consistency showed in this final, and it showed why they deserve to be there over teams like Uruguay or Brazil or Spain even. Mm-hmm. And it really added an appreciation for just pure soccer talent working together as a team. And that team effort, it brought all the positive stereotypes that we talk about team sports together, and that can really make a fan and people from France proud of this World Cup.
Agreed, absolutely. And finally, you, Luis, your final closing thoughts on this final and overall, just your raw reaction and takeaway.
Well, in my opinion, after the 1998 final, which was the first match I ever saw in my life, probably the best World Cup final I ever saw, because I hate overtimes. I'm going to be very sincere. I hate overtimes. I hate the sudden deaths.
You hate it until you're in it and you win it, right?
Yeah. No, I hate it in the most personal and the professional way. I hate the overtimes, and that's how the last three finals had ended up before this one. So I think in this occasion, I saw a very fantastic match. I saw a very untraditional but so fighted final. It's for me what the perfect soccer match have to be all about.
I agree. I completely agree. And really for me too, yeah, I kind of share sentiments from all of you, honestly. I think that this was definitely a big moment for France because they proved that, listen, when you have some of the best players in the world all on the field at the same time, some special things are going to happen. And I think we really learned that the next big star, once Messi and Ronaldo hang their boots up, is here, and he is going to rain havoc on the soccer world for a long time. So I'm really excited to see what that looks like as well too. Gentlemen, I want to thank each and every one of you for your hard work and dedication during this World Cup as well too. It's been a lot of fun. Thank you to all of you, the listeners, as well too. We've definitely enjoyed bringing you our raw thoughts, opinions, and just overall analysis of the games that took place over the last month as well too. We do want to announce that if you are still going to be looking for more soccer as the Premier League and many other seasons start to kick up here again in the next couple of months, Your Soccer Passport will be transitioning to a weekly show. It'll be airing on Tuesdays on Public House Media. We'll have a lot more info coming out about that here in the next couple of days. So make sure to keep an eye out, an ear out for all of that. Go over to Public House Media on Facebook. Give that page a like. You'll find information about this show as it comes out more in our future publications as well too. I want to say a big thank you again to all of you. A big thanks to Ivan Sanchez, Brice Burge, and Brice Burranca as well too for stopping by the program. Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Thank you for your time and insight this evening.
Thanks, Baxter.
Appreciate it.
All right, and thank you, the listener, as well, for tuning in. Remember, you can find the show by going to Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and wherever you find your podcasts. Go over to thephmedia.com and go to squadcast.fm as well. They are the official presenting sponsor of Your Soccer Passport World Cup Edition. I'm Baxter Colburn saying thank you so much for tuning in to another edition, the final World Cup edition of Your Soccer Passport here on Public House Media.